To Philly we go! Thank God.
Myles Garrett to the Eagles just got very real. Dallas still stinks. You but the way it kicked it back here, and wow. All I can say is wow. We just talked about this a week ago. It's only a matter of time before we start hearing Myles Garrett's name in trade rumors. And these trade rumors, oh, they're the real deal because it's gonna happen, all right? If you're the most negative Eagle fan out there and you think the offseason has been horrible and they've gotten worse, this one move changes everything. Because if the Eagles could acquire Myles Garrett, this team is headed back to the bowl. And it wouldn't just impact the Eagles. Any team that could acquire Myles Garrett could significantly help themselves and be a completely different team. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about this. The Browns and Myles Garrett have agreed to move the $29 million roster bonus owed to him today to August 30th, per Atfield Yates. This would theoretically increase Garrett's ability to be traded over the summer as it lessens future dead cap hit to the team. Now, you're going to start to hear, and we're already starting to hear rebuts from Cleveland and people who basically want to keep him, and I understand why, saying this doesn't necessarily mean a trade or anything like that. And it doesn't. It doesn't make anything 100%. Nothing makes anything 100%. But if you're the Browns and you have just an inch of logic and sanity, you would trade him. You would trade him right now while you could get him at peak value, okay? And if you start looking at what the Eagles tried to do during the trade deadline last year with rumored 3 first-round picks they offered to Cleveland for him, yes, the Eagles are going to significantly be in on this, and so will many other teams, including the Dallas Cowboys, okay? Now, there are 2 ways to look at this. One, you can be like, listen, he's 30 years old, he's just had his best career, he's probably, best season of his career he's probably ever going to have. Why would you give up all that stuff, all those draft picks for him right now? Why would you do it? And you know what? They're not wrong. They're not wrong. I don't think there's a wrong or a right to this whole thing, okay? Me specifically, the reason why I would do this is because it's Myles Garrett. You're talking about a generational talent. And when I look at Myles Garrett, he's 30 years old, yes, but I think he can give you 4 good years, all right? And though he may not go out and get 23 sacks next year, which is what he had this year, you just look at his numbers from his rookie year. 2017, 7 sacks. Then 2018, 13 and a half. 2019, 10. 2020, 12. 2021, 16. 2022, 16. 2023, 14. 2024, 14. 2025, 23. Even if he has a drop-off, you're still talking about 14, 15 sacks, okay? So there's not many players that I would trade the amount of draft picks it's going to take, and we're going to talk about what it's going to take for him. There's not many players I would do this for, but I would do it for him. I would not give 2 first rounds for Max Crosby, but I would consider giving up a lot for Myles Garrett. Now, it depends on one thing, okay? Because I've seen Jalen Carter's name be put out with a possible trade for Myles Garrett, where people are saying, well, would you trade a first and Jalen Carter? Jalen Carter is off the table. The reason why I want Myles Garrett is to play with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. But Myles Garrett on the Eagles transforms that defense. It does. That would be the best defensive line the Eagles have had, I would say, since Reggie Clyde and Jerome. Mike Pitts, with Golick rotating in. It would have the ability to be that good, okay? Now, You could talk about like how much is it going to cost? Why would they do this? Here are some things on that. According to 2 league sources, the out-of-the-box blue contract modification on a 4-year extension signed a year ago essentially makes Garrett easier to trade at Tony Grossi on the Browns adjusting Myles Garrett contract situation. Here is what it's going to cost the Eagles or any team that would trade for him. All right? So a deal to a new team would acquire Myles Garrett. In 2026, his cap number would be $9 million. $9 million. The Eagles could take that on now. Then it would go up to 17 in 2027. Not a problem. 21 million in 2028. Not a problem. 2029, it jumps up to 57. 2030, 57. Then 2031, you got a dead cap of about 16. Looks like that's probably a void year. So per Field Yates, the report was a change. The change was in 2029, 2030. I guess that's where they're moving money to. So essentially, it would cost you $9 million, $9.1 million to have him this year. So yes, from the standpoint of how much it would cost you to bring him in, we know from right here, he is very, very affordable. And that's going to make him attractive to many teams. Listen, the Eagles will, if you're asking me, will the Eagles be in on this? Yes. They're going to be on this, and they're going to be big-time players in this. Why? Because we know last offseason, Eagles tried to contact the Browns. Oh, Andrew Berry, a guy who worked with Howie Roseman. The Eagles contacted about Garrett. They weren't interested. At the trade deadline, it was reported that the Eagles offered 3 first-round picks at the trade deadline for Myles Garrett. Why would that change right now? Especially when you need an edge rusher. Seriously, one of your biggest needs could go to one of your biggest strengths. And if you put him with Jalen Carter, and see, this is the key. You've got to keep him with Jalen Carter. I don't want to go and lose Jalen Carter and have Myles Garrett and go from a young defensive line to an old one. I want to bring Myles Garrett to play with him. That's the whole point, okay? Now, here's the other thing that I'm going to say about this. If you're going to trade for Myles Garrett, and I do think the Eagles will be in on this, this completely ends, in my opinion and my preference, this would completely end any talk of A.J. Brown getting traded. Forget it. It's off the table. I'm not trading Brown. I'm not including Brown in a trade for him. I'm not trading him to the Patriots. He is playing at least one more year. I'm getting Myles Garrett at $9 million. Why on earth, after I'm probably going to have to move 2 or 3 first-round picks for him, minimum, why would I trade A.J. Brown then and then have a giant hole at the wide receiver position that I can't fill in the draft with a first-round pick because I don't got one? So it doesn't make sense. The idea is to get Myles Garrett and then go win. You get Myles Garrett, you keep A.J. Brown, you're going back to the bowl, man, as long as you stay relatively healthy. So my conditions for it are this. You want to go after Myles Garrett? Let's do it. Generational player. You know, if there's ever a guy you take a chance on, this is the kind of guy you do it. But my stipulations are you have to keep Jalen Carter and you have to keep A.J. Brown. Those 2 things need to happen. Now, if they do trade A.J. Brown, yes, then that definitely lightens the load of what you have to give in terms of draft picks, especially if you get a 1 for A.J. Brown. But now you have a giant hole at wide receiver. Now you have basically, you replace the hole at the edge rusher for the hole at wide receiver, and you don't have a first-round pick to go out and try to replace him with. So you got to keep that in mind also. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting, you know. ESPN Cleveland said this, what they say isn't important, talking about the Browns and the contract. Because we're hearing now they're not going to trade him. And I agree with this. What they say isn't important, it's what they do, Tom Grossi says. The signs are pointing towards the Browns being open to trading Garrett. Now, the Browns are not going to trade him away for nothing. And it's a lot to give up, so maybe at the end of the day they don't do it. But they're at least way more open to it than they have ever been. And if you take that and you look at the fact that the Eagles need an edge rusher and the Eagles have been trying to get this dude for 2 years, you've got to think the Eagles are going to be real players in it. Now, the other side of it, like I talked about earlier, your guy's 30 years old. You don't want to give up, first-round picks for him. I get it. You're not totally wrong. And 99.9% of the time, and the players in the league, I would agree with you. I would never do it. I wouldn't give 2 first rounds for Crosby. I think Myles Garrett's different. I think he's different. I still think he's got a good 4 years left. And I think that when you have a chance to get a Hall of Famer in the prime of his career right now, and you could add him to a young guy like a Jalen Carter, a Jalen Hunt, I would do it. Now, what are the Eagles going to have to give up for it? I don't know. I would like to not give up 3 first-round picks, but you may have to go there. I'm thinking maybe you do something, and you guys could put in different things that you think are possible. Maybe you could do something like, first this year. I don't mind giving up the first this year because I think the draft in the first round isn't all that great anyways. But like first this year, first next year, which is a really good pick, by the way, because that's going to be a hell of a draft. But a first this year, a first next year, Nolan Smith, and a second, something like that. I would be open to doing. I would consider strongly trade Nolan Smith in this deal with the Browns. So maybe you could do like, a first this year, a second next year, a first in 2028, and Nolan Smith. Something like that. If they can do it, especially without 3 first-round picks, do it. Do I think they can? I don't think so, because I think you're going to have multiple teams bidding for his services. It's going to be a bidding war, and it's going to get expensive. But if I have a chance to add him, I would do it. And I would do it, and I would say, look, AJ, you're staying. 1 more year, you're staying, and that gives me time to figure out the wide receiver position. Now, if they were like, Browns like, we want A.J.Brown in it, then you do it. But I try not to. I think Myles Garrett, if there's ever a guy, non-quarterback worth taking a shot on, it's Myles Garrett. And here's the beauty. The Eagles have picked so well over the last few years. I think they'll be okay. I think you could look at some of the picks that they've made, and you could say, well, that's like a first-round pick. I mean, Cooper DeJean is essentially, that was a first-round pick. Come on, Jalen Hunt is developing into somebody that's at least a higher pick than what they took him for, and maybe Nolan Smith is the odd man out. I don't know. But it's going to be interesting. I understand both perspectives. If it's me, I'm taking a chance on this one. I got to. Max Crosby, 2 first-round picks, I'm out. Most players, I would be out. Myles Garrett, I think it's the exception, and I think Howie thinks that too. With that said, take care. Talk to you later. Of course, don't be a dingbat. Remember, it's Howie Vision, baby. We're all just living in it. Oh, I fully expect the Dallas Cowboys to be in on this. And what do I think would it do for the Dallas Cowboys? Yeah, it would significantly change that defense. It would make Dallas viable. It would. I have not been impressed with what they've done this all season. Myles Garrett, that kind of move, that's the kind of move I expect for Dallas with an aging quarterback to do. So I expect Dallas with 2 first-round picks to be players in this, and he's going to have to go balls to the wall on this one. Denzel Washington out. That's all, folks.